We're almost there.
All right. All right, this is group 3. We are going to discuss the textbook activity. We're going to start off by each person is going to kind of summarize what their reading assignment was, starting off with Leah.
Okay. And we're looking in the strengths and leadership, correct?
Yes.
Okay. My assignment covered the beginning of the book where they were talking about finding your leadership strengths. It was actually pretty interesting to see, well, interesting, I guess, if you're into the data collection thing, how they went out and they compiled information about how strong leaders are actually made. Their point was that in leadership, you can't just put one strength out there. You can't put all your apples in one, or everything in one spot, that you have to actually make sure that your leadership abilities are spread out, and that you need to, when you're creating your leadership teams, make sure that you don't just mirror yourself in the people that you put on your leadership teams, that you actually try to find people that have strengths in areas where you're lacking in strengths.
Okay. I read part 2 in the strengths-based leadership text, which discussed maximizing your team and how effective leaders surround themselves with the right people, and then they build upon each other's strengths. This section discussed the 4 domains of leadership strengths, which are executing, influencing, relationship building, and strategic thinking. And what it means is that each person on the team they focus on the strengths that they have in that area, that in that domain. That way, when you come together, you'll be more productive in whatever task that you're taking on. A quick summary is for the leaders who have the dominant strength. They some of the traits or behaviors include being an achiever or being consistent, having discipline and focusing, while those who lead by influencing help their teams by using assurance, and they're great communicators and are, competitive. They're able to woo. Those with relationship building, those leaders whose strength are in relationships, they're able to adapt. They have the harmony, the empathy for others. And then the strategic thinkers are those who are analytic and can work based on the input of others. They're learners, and again, they have that strategic thinking. So when all of those strengths come together, you're able to produce more. And then it also focuses on that, unfortunately, a lot of people in those in the head leadership positions don't always pick those who have the other skills in the other domains.
Okay. Okay. I'm here to give you some information on Wendy Cope, pages 31 through 38. Wendy Cope, she was a student at Princeton, and during her senior year, she was trying to find a subject that she wanted to write her thesis on. So she thought about education inequality, and that became an interest to her. So she decided that she wanted to do some more research. So she began by, she noticed that at her school at Princeton, there were 2 divergent of students in her institution. The first group were the students from this prep school, and they called them Cakewalk. And then the other group, they grew up in urban public school, struggling to meet the academic expectation of the Ivy League schools. So after looking at this, she thought that inequality must be worse in other parts of the country. So she gathered a group of fellow students to discuss the problem. And it was so hard for most children to get the education that they deserved. She heard students after students express their interest in teaching, but they described that they could not attend the school that they wanted to attend. So she wanted to fit what she called a massive problem. She wanted to fix that problem, and she wanted to create a national peace corps. So she contacted George W. Bush, who was president at that time, but she didn't hear anything from him, from his office. So she went on, she found a paper from one of Kennedy's advisors that suggested that a minimum of 500 people were necessary to convey a sense of urgency. So she needed $2.5 million. She didn't know how or where she was going to get this money from, but she was determined not to give up. She recruited some of the brightest people she knew to commit to the unfunded start up for the next 12 months. And she wanted 500 teachers, but she just didn't want any teachers. She wanted the best. And she wanted the new program, Teach for America, to be very selective. So they had to recruit, interview, and screened about 2,500 applicants just to try to get the 500 students they needed. So she raised $2.5 million and built the organization from scratch over a 1-year period. So she was she appeared on in magazines, Good Morning America, and I like the way when the author states that Wendy Cope may be the best example of how you can take one dominant strength, achiever, and spend a lifetime applying it.
All right, the next person we're looking at is Simon Cooper. Simon Cooper was the president of the Ritz-Carlton since about 2001. His top 5 strengths: he was a maximizer, he was an activator, he specialized in making people significant, and he had the woo factor. Mr. Cooper was taking over for someone at the Ritz-Carlton that had been there for quite a long time, and they said he basically walked on water. So he had some pretty big shoes to fill. So basically, you know, the Ritz-Carlton is a world-class place, and he knew he was going into a really good job, and he wanted to go from making it great in just a few aspects to world-class in all aspects. So basically, he studied what was already loved by the customers and tried to maximize the opportunity. He wanted to build on strengths that the hotel's employees were basically 90% of the experience at this hotel. So it's not just a nice luxury place you're going to, but the people who are taking care of you, the services that they provide, and the things that they could do that were basically only to that hotel name. So he basically asked the customer, he said, you know, what are some things you can buy? Well, you can buy, you know, this concierge service, you can buy massages, whatever. But what are some things you can't buy? And those were the things that he focused on. He focused on, you know, you can't buy a smile, or you can't buy caring service, or you can't buy the way someone treats you. So he really kind of focused on that. He said we were trying to win the hearts and the minds of each guest. So Mr. Cooper wanted to leave a legacy of guests for life. He used his maximizer theme to increase employee engagement. Most of the properties were above the 95th percentile in customer engagement. But what he challenged the rest of his hotels to do was 95% should be the base. That you're going to be in the red zone if you have 95% of customer engagement. He was going for the 98th to 99th percentile of customer engagement. So he wanted to make sure that he took pride himself and not just having a good brand, but also having relationships with his employees. And he would bring in famous people to talk to them about not just to the big groups, would come to meet the people that were the cooks and were the people that cleaned up the rooms and things like that. So we got some engagement in that part.
All right.
All right. Go ahead.
So I'm just making sure. So then it was on to me.
Yes.
With Mervyn Davies, and he's actually a pretty interesting character. His strengths were that he was an achiever, he was futuristic, positivity, that he's a relator, and that he's a learner. He was the chairman of Standard Chartered Bank, which honestly I had never heard of until I read this, but apparently it was a big thing. He went in as CEO during a time period when banks were starting to be very conservative because they were looking at short-term goals, and they were investing strongly in Europe with monies, and he decided that he wanted to look more long-term when he went in, and he decided to try to open the market in Africa and India and the Middle East. Because he was doing this, he decided to be very open with everybody in the organization, and he was faulted for being a relator or overly relating to his employees, because most banks at the time period were scared and they weren't sharing a lot of information. He was one of those guys that made sure he communicated with his top level managers or directors, and then the next sector of directors, he always sent them out like a weekly email, and then every month he made sure that he let every employee in the company, and there were like 70,000 employees, receive an email knowing what his plans were. He actually was the only bank at the end of this era that was still making money, as opposed to the other banks that went into recession, because he actually was a forward thinker rather than just short term. And I think, what else did he do? Let's see. He says the reasons that they thrived was because he had focused on two things. He focused on the people and corporate social responsibility, and he chose to do that against the shareholders' wills at the time. And even though he was faulted for being a communicator, I think that's what really made his success happen, is the fact that he surrounded himself. He said since they were in a world market that he needed to make sure all of his top leaders were from various areas and cultures so that they could communicate properly. And so he built his leadership team around the fact that he knew he was a relator and a communicator, and he could lead and take them where his vision was going, but he needed other people to surround him that were stronger where he was weaker, and to help him hold the spot he was in and push towards their goal. So that's Mervyn Davies, sorry.
Okay, next was Brad Anderson, who is the CEO of Best Buy. Discuss was how when you walk into Best Buy, the headquarters in Minneapolis, how it resembles more of a student union than a Fortune 500 company, just because of the atmosphere, and everyone looks like they are having more fun. It doesn't look like your average work environment, with cubicles and everybody sitting doing whatever. Just like they're having a very fun atmosphere. His top 5 things were context, ideation, input, learner, and connectedness, but they said the text discussed how that's something that you would not think if you were to look at his history, he started off in school with poor grades. Even from elementary on up through high school, he did not do very well. But it wasn't until he got into college and was able to study what he wanted to study that his academics soared. At that point, he started working, and I think it was around the age 24, he started working at a store called the Sound of Music, which was a small electronics retailer. And he started working his way up from store manager. Then he made it to the corporate office, and then a couple of years after that, the store changed his name to Best Buy and started expanding. In '86, he was asked to work under the founder, and it was at that time that people really began to question, who is this man? What he started to do, he started walking in other businesses, such as grocery stores and other retailers, to just study how they work. He did some study groups and found out that they felt more comfortable going to a car lot shopping than they did going to Best Buy because of the way that the employees would hound them about buying a product, because their pay was commission based. So at that time, Anderson and the founder decided that the only way for their store to survive was to take this big risk and model themselves after some of the other businesses. So anyway, they changed face because at that time, I guess they were close to losing the business. So they changed face. They started taking all this risk. Okay, we're just going to let people shop. We're going to be there to assist them as needed. And based upon that idea, they were able to expand and become what they are today. What I got most from this is that Anderson, once they started making the change, he started reading every type of book he could think of, every book that he could find, business books, magazines, historical biographies, anything that he could. And then his team would be people who he knew would challenge the way that he thought, the way that he worked. And his chemistry amongst all of those others is what helped the company be more successful. They talked about how he would be in the room with the board, and he would be talking about, okay, the company is going to do X, Y, and Z, and some of the board members would be sitting there bored, probably not knowing anything about what he was saying, even though he was very excited about the changes that were going to come, the changes that were having, how they wouldn't be paying him any attention, but he knew that all in all, they were going to come back, and together they would successfully implement the ideas.
All right.
So that's it.
Okay. Collective talent of a team. Okay, this it talked about the 4 leaders who had clarity about who they are and who they're not. So they learned from working with top executive team at Hampton, and that is, Hampton is a U.S. Hotel chain. So once the team learned to leverage each person's strength, it quickly finds new ways to drive organizational performance. So Hampton's president, Phil Cordell, company team appeared to be on the right track. His leadership team has extraordinary talent. Hampton was well ahead of its competitors, but Cordell wanted to widen that lead. He hoped to initiate a major international expansion. So Cordell had ambitions and goals. After interviewing each member of his core executive group, he discovered they were loyal and eager to drive performance and respected Cordell as a leader. So Cordell's aggressive growth plan was going to stretch. In order to develop a plan and lay the foundation for international growth, Cordell would have to be absent from a significant amount of time. So you would think by him being absent, that would make his company grow. But the way the team was functioning, it would collapse without him. So he would need to be present in order for it to survive. And the author talked about the strong team, what strong team have in common. And he lists 5 things that they have in common. And he talked about the conflict doesn't destroy strong team because strong teams focus on results. And then strong team prioritize. Members of strong team are committed. And 4, strong team embrace diversity. And 5, he talked about strong team are magnets. And then he summed up by stating that a strong team requires a substantial amount of time and effort. Getting the right strength on the team is a good starting point, but it is not enough for a team to create sustained growth. The leader must continue to invest in each person's strengths and in building better relationship amongst group members. Okay.
All right. The last section 3, basically we talked about, understanding why people follow. And one of the things they talked about was you're a leader only if others follow. Leaders are only as strong as the connections that they make with each person in their constituency, whether they have 1 follow or 1 million. We should ask the followers why they rally behind the leader. So information from Gallup, from a poll that they did, or a study they did from 2005 to 2008, showed that followers had 4 basic needs. They basically needed to trust the leader. The leader needed to have compassion, stability, and hope. So, trust, when they did the study, they also came up with words like honesty, integrity, and respect as distinct contributions from the leaders in their lives. A National Gallup poll showed that a chance of employees being engaged at work when they did not trust the company's leadership is 1 in 12. So 1 out of 12 people was engaged if they did not basically trust the leadership. It went up to 1 in 2, so 1 out of 2 employees was engaged if they did trust the leadership. Trust increases speed and efficiency in the workplace. Coffee Anon said, if you don't have relationships, you start from 0 each time. So if you have in the workplace, if you have a lot of change, if you have, because the more change, the less you trust, the less chance there's to stay at a job, the more change happens. And when you don't know the worker beside you as well, you're not able to increase those production times and increase. Like I said, you're from ground zero every time somebody new comes to work with you. How do you convince a person of your honesty? By being authentic, and you basically, sometimes you must show your flaws. Relationships trump competence and building trust. Compassion, in other words for compassion, or caring, friendship, happiness, and love. When people agree with the statement, someone at work cares about me, then they're likely to stay with the organization. They have more engaged customers, more productivity, and they produce more profitability. Mervyn Davies, who you just heard about, said organizational leaders must have a positive bias because employees don't want to follow negative people around them. Davies knew for people to truly love their organization, it needed to have a heart of stability. So stability. Also words for that are security, strength, support, peace, as well. As leaders, your followers also need to know that your core values are stable. Employees who have high confidence in their company's financial future are 9 times as likely to be engaged in the job when compared to people that don't have a very high confidence. And then nothing creates stability as quickly as transparency. Hope. Followers want stability in the moment and hope for our future. Associated with hope are direction, faith, and guidance. When employees feel enthusiastic about their future, 69% of them were engaged in their jobs. When hope is absent, people lose confidence, disengage, and feel helpless. It is even more important to have hope during difficult times. Many high-level executives spend almost all of their time reacting to the needs of the day instead of initiating for the future. And this shows that the leaders are not in charge of what they're doing. Many leaders feel it is their ability to progress in their career, and they want to do it over, to progress in our career, and that is often determined by our effectiveness responding to near-term needs. So basically, if you get things done in the short term, if you are able to fix problems in the short term, then you're going to basically be able to go up in the organization. Because if you respond to things, it's easier than getting to the bottom of the problem. Solving problems comes naturally to many people, and then initiating is much harder work. Okay, so that's basically a summary of the strength-based leadership book. Now we're going to go to the 9 questions or the 9 responses from the book, and as well as the 4 chapters of the management of organizational behavior. I know we have about 3 minutes left. When it gets to 1 minute, we'll just go ahead and get to a stopping point, and then go to another Zoom. Okay.
Okay.
Good. And we'll use the same ID number unless we can't. All right. So the first response to discuss is, it says, discuss the difference between a leader and a manager, citing valid research in the discussion. In other words, what does research have to say?
All right. So looking at the vision into performance model that was in chapter 4 in the book, it said that a manager is the person who actually creates what needs to be done, but a lot of times that's where businesses have a problem. They create the plan, but then there's nobody who actually executes it and carries it through with vision, and that the leader is actually that person who, once the plan's created, has the vision to take everyone forward and complete that actual vision or plan that they have in an organization.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Matthew. Go ahead.
I basically said I think we talked about this earlier in a Zoom session, back from the management organizational behavior book in chapter 1, basically talked about management itself is a process of working with and through individuals and groups and allocating other resources to accomplish organizational goals. And leadership is the act of influencing the behavior of an individual or group, which is from page 3 and 4. So very, very similar to what Leah said. But which is more important? I don't know. In some cases, you may need either one.
Okay. I
You
said
have 1 minute.
are more about creating plans than it is achieving those plans. And then manager makes decisions that spells out the business ideas, strategies, mission. And then Hesse and Goldsmith isolated 7 variables related to effective performance and management. And they were ability, understanding, organizational support, motivation, performance validity, and environment.
All right. What we'll do is we'll go ahead and I'll get the next one started. Can I text you guys when it's ready?
Yeah.
Okay. It should just be a couple minutes. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.